I think that the main advice that I would give is that if it's not in your personality to speak up every time in advocating for yourself or for your students or your clients, at least show up. So be willing to join the union if there is one, and just go to school board meetings, refer to their websites for policies that you can refer back to when you are suggesting a program that you want the district or your employer to pay for because it will benefit your clients.
Hey there, and welcome to the Speechy Side Up podcast. My name is Vanita Litvack, and I am so grateful you're here. I'm an ASHA certified speech language pathologist, author, and augmentative and alternative communication consultant who is obsessed with helping SLPs like you stop reinventing the wheel and connect with other SLPs in the trenches. Have you ever wondered how other SLPs seem to be doing it all with ease? Well, around here, you'll get to hear firsthand how SLPs are really getting things done while keeping evidence-based practice and self-care in mind. Think of this as a coffee date with your SLP friends. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while we learn together. Today, I'm joined by Erin Vance, a speech language pathologist with 26 years of diverse experience across the United States. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree with a double major in English and Speech and Hearing, graduating summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and a Master of Science in Communication Disorders. Erin has worked in various settings, including schools, rehab hospitals, skilled nursing, outpatient clinics, home health, group private practice, and telehealth. She moved to Oregon in 2009 to be near family and has since settled in a small town where her career offers flexibility. Erin has been involved in social and community justice, organizing an activist group for immigration reform, and testifying before the Oregon legislature for legislative changes. She also published an article in 2017 that combined her literary background with her activism. During the COVID lockdowns, Erin transitioned her pediatric private practice into teletherapy within 24 hours, leveraging her prior experience with virtual modalities. Currently, she works in her local school district to support her community directly. Reflecting on her career, Erin is proud of her growth and adaptability and is committed to mentoring the next generation of clinicians to develop their identity, strengths, and advocacy skills. Erin, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Do you feel like that covers everything, or is there anything else that you would like to add before we jump into our questions?
No, that sounds great.
Perfect. So, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges as a speech language pathologist now, and what steps can we start taking to overcome that challenge?
I think one of our primary challenges is helping those with communication disorders improve within the context of a vastly changing landscape where too many typical adults demonstrate less than ideal communication skills themselves. Just this year, I've noticed many teachers, administrators, other professionals in my own school district struggle with modeling good communication skills. And I've also noticed that there is a culture of everybody having their own set of duties or things that they need to work on, which does not include really any carryover from my sessions. So I could give examples. Do you want me to?
Yeah, that would be
Uh,
great.
okay. So just this year, I had one teacher who decided apparently not to show up for two separate IEP meetings. This was after multiple written and verbal communications about the date and time, as well as me emphasizing that teachers are, in fact, the most important professional to attend these meetings because they have those students all year long and all day long. So it also comes down to leadership, I believe, because in that example, the second time it happened, I contacted the administrators and I said that they needed to, talk with the teacher because it's mandatory. And the response that I got was this teacher was also frustrated because I did not include them in the scheduling process. So, just a lot of, I think, negligent behaviors on the parts of our teams. I'm seeing a lot of that this year or since COVID, especially. It seems like everybody's overextended. I definitely have the largest caseload I've ever had. And ASHA, I believe, came out with two articles in recent months indicating that referrals for speech and language disorders has increased since COVID by, I believe the figure was 110%. I can look that up and let you know for sure. But basically, I've noticed that there's fewer instances of conversation that happens. People seem to be less willing to implement suggestions that I make. And I think social media, AI, those alternate forms of communication are actually making it harder for people to speak to one another and have efficient communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are definitely a lot of challenges within our field right now, but we don't want to dwell there. So, how can we
Right.
most effectively advocate for ourselves in this field with employers, supervisors, caregivers, and our clients or patients?
So, my perspective is that what we have to do the most is model as good communication skills as we can with those people. For example, if you work in a school, this year I started out the year sending out a school wide email introducing myself and talking about the scheduling process that I would take just with my sessions. And I emphasized that I would be as flexible as possible. However, due to the nature of school schedules where you can't take them from reading or, core subjects, there's not a lot of time in the day for each grade level. So I emphasized that I wanted them to approach me if they had a conflict once I came up with the schedule. I also emailed all the teachers their students' IEPs so that they would have a digital copy that they could easily refer to if they had questions or just didn't know what we were working on. And so modeling that behaviors relating to reaching out, even recognizing that it's going to take numerous attempts for most people. So sending an email, then following it up with, the first time I went to the classroom, doing or encouraging, I should say, encouraging them to participate in at least the early sessions with their students, making those push in, especially for the youngest students that really can benefit from more whole class instruction. Also, being willing to meet the teachers as well where they are. That's been kind of a challenge for me because I expect that everyone else would have a similar level of skill, but they're just as overwhelmed, I think, or more so than we are. There's staff shortages. A lot of districts have made cuts this year to staff, despite there being more behaviors, more, students. So there's a lot to think about. And I think that the main advice that I would give is that if it's not in your personality to speak up every time in advocating for yourself or for your students or your clients, at least show up. So be willing to join the union if there is one, and just go to school board meetings, refer to their websites for policies that you can refer back to when you are suggesting, a program, for example, or a curriculum that you want the district or your employer to pay for because it will benefit your clients.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing those. And I love what you said about if you're not able to speak up, at least show up. I think that's a really great point. So, how has
Thank
your perspective towards your practice, the field, your clients, and career changed since receiving your own diagnosis of ADHD last year?
Yes. Well, it's been very interesting, this journey. So I will be 50 in just a month. And so I've been in this career for a long time. And a huge part of it has been the seeming explosion of neurodiversity amongst our clients. There's been a noticeable increase in the number of, for example, autism and ADHD as well. And I think that for the longest time, I had that removed perspective that everything I was talking about to my clients about their ADHD or their autism related to only them, which is fair because every person with autism and with ADHD presents differently. That's the whole biggest challenge with working with clients that are neurodivergent. So when I struggled like more than ever with things like procrastination, with disorganization, with being distracted or wishing I was doing something else, that was always something that I just took to be my own imagination, that kind of thing. And I did use it to my benefit for most of the years of my career. However, last year, it really became a negative impact on my job because I was missing deadlines. I was just really struggling to keep on top of those case management details that aren't usually the most fun, but they still need to be done. And but once I did get that diagnosis and started treating my ADHD, it's been night and day, actually. This year, even as I've said, I had the biggest caseload that I've ever had. I was able to meet all of my deadlines. I was able to plan ahead, which I used to just kind of wing it a lot of the time. And it's also really, I think, most notably given me a much better perspective about what ADHD in particular, but also autism can present. And I took some continuing education credits this year to talk about that and learn about that more because I have other family members that were diagnosed with ADHD as when we were kids, but that always was with boys, and it was always the classic symptoms, including the hyperactivity. And so, because I was a good student, I was a perfectionist, I wanted to please my, parents and my teachers, I didn't have a problem finishing the work or doing well. So, that combined with the fact that I'm not physically hyperactive meant that it was 40 plus years before I got a clear picture of what my brain or how it works, I should say.
Thank you for sharing your personal experience. Do you mind sharing how you've treated it? Is it through
Yes.
medication or therapy?
Yes. Both actually. I had already been diagnosed as a young adult with general anxiety disorder, which I assumed all this time that the procrastination, the distractibility was more related to the anxiety because it was like a cycle. And then, so I treated that for all these years and it did get better. But there was still that part of me that just couldn't concentrate, or get started on things. And so then I started with Adderall, a low dose, and built up. I'm still only taking 20 milligrams each day that I need to. And it gives me more energy, but most especially, I've noticed I don't just put off doing what I need to do. I'm able to make lists. I'm able to get started on things pretty early. And as I mentioned, typically I might schedule meetings, you know, less than a week in advance. This year, I was able to be more organized, plan ahead, and but I've also consistently been working on those skills in therapy as well. And I found that one of the ways it's helped me is already knowing what I would practice with my clients who have ADHD. As soon as I could try to apply those things to myself, it was easier, I think, to make those habits stick.
Thank you for sharing that. It's going to be really helpful for anybody that's listening and might say, "Oh, hey, like that's me too." And I really should look into this more. I appreciate it. What are some considerations to be mindful of when it comes to racially, linguistically, ethnically, and more diverse populations that we serve, especially as a field of large monolinguistic white women practitioners?
Yes. So for this, I also am white, middle class, monolinguistic for most of my career, or my whole career, but most of my life. I did become very loosely conversationally fluent in Spanish when I was first taking it in like high school and college. But because I didn't keep up with it, that's, 95% gone at this point. So I fit basically the stereotype of a speech pathologist who, I've read that there's, 95% of us, or upwards of 95%, are white women, or at least not bilingual. And yet, currently, my caseload includes a dual language instruction program. So, about 33% of our students in this area are Spanish speaking. Their parents are either Mexican American or from Latin America. And they might be bilingual, but they also might only have a home language of Spanish. And I found that it really impacted what I was working on with them in particular. So, for example, coming into this job this year, I looked at those students, their goals, of course, and most of them included goals like correct production of the TH sound or the V sound, which, if you know anything about Spanish, those sounds are not in Spanish. So it's not a language or speech disorder if they can't produce those sounds. It's a difference. And so I've rewritten many of the goals that were written prior to me working there. Also, I've noticed that some of the kids can speak great sentences in Spanish, um, but they really struggle with vocabulary in English. Well, again, that's not, if Spanish is their primary language and the language of their instruction, that's not a language disorder. And so it really pinpointed for me this year that I need to be extra careful when I am evaluating, when I'm doing just every session, reevaluating or reassessing where they are based on their data. And I've also started trying to relearn the most common vocabulary in Spanish so that I can at least recognize words when I hear them. Also, I've worked in places like Georgia, where I would say 85% of my caseload was African American. And, I had to adjust my own linguistic considerations because I don't speak African American English, but that is a legitimate dialect. And same with like Native Americans. I worked in Montana on a Native American reservation, actually, but it was the school district. So again, I would say 85 to 90% were Native American. And so just all these different cultures that I want to be very clear. I am not trying to change their culture, their language. I'm not trying to impose anything onto them from my linguistic and ethnic background. And that just takes a lot of thought, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of considerations to keep in mind, especially with the population that you're serving and just being cognizant of that and also learning more how you can better serve those populations. Those are great suggestions.
Yeah, exactly. I have had experiences where, for example, just in Georgia, when I was working with school age students, elementary age, I was struck by the fact that one of the fifth graders at Christmas time, they were about to have a school party or dance, and the theme was White Christmas.
Mm.
Well, as an adult, I know the song, I know the movie, I know that that relates to snow, but because those students were in Georgia, where they don't get much snow, if any, this little girl said to me, "Well, I can't go to that party." And I said, "Well, why not?" "Because it's a white Christmas."
Mm.
And she thought it meant the skin color. And I would never have thought that myself, but it makes sense that a young generation who maybe has never heard of that phrase would take it to mean that. So it just pointed out to me that I really need to be considerate about, everything from the levels of their, socioeconomics to the traumas that they've experienced, and we've all experienced through, you know, going through COVID, and a majority of the students not being in school because of COVID for at least a year. And we couldn't guarantee that they would all have internet access. So things like that, they couldn't socialize maybe even on a playground. And those have real and noticeable impacts on their development on top of their culture, their language, and just all the things that I myself might take for granted. And I have to be careful not to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, this has been so informative. Thank you so much. If people want to find and connect with you, where can they reach you?
Well, I don't generally use social media that much, although I think I have to create a work one. But my Twitter or X handle is Anamkara, which is Anamchara. And then my Instagram is that same word, Anamkara, with 1317 at the end of it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And like I said, really, really helpful for anybody that's listening. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I hope that, yes, I can help people or, just make people more aware that we have such a vital role, but we also have more power than we often think we do. And we should be thoughtful or mindful about using that power for all of our benefits.
Yeah, great points. Well, thank you again, Erin.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. By the way, have you joined the SSU crew yet? By joining, you get access to the free goods section on our website, plus podcast updates, special event notifications, and therapy inspiration. You can sign up at bit.ly/join SSU crew, all lowercase, or just find the link in this episode description. Also, don't forget to take a screenshot of this episode so that you can always refer back to it, and share it on social media if you really love the topic. Take care, and remember to always fill your speechy side cup first before you can pour into others.